Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. We've got some great business to attend to today, including a little bit of a freakout happening amongst the Democrats. We got Jack Smith and his legal team sending letters. We got clips of Mark Elias and the rest of the dorks over there, all very upset that they may be on the receiving end of a legitimate criminal investigation. And so we're going to talk about a lot of that today. Quick preview, and then we'll dive in for further detail. But let's take a quick roundup on what is coming up. As you can see, we've got the New York Times got their hands on a letter, and shout out to Julie Kelly. I saw her post about this. Flag it for us. We appreciate that. But here's the letter. It's 3 pages, baby. And the New York Times gives us some background on it, but this is now going over to the acting special counsel, which we know is looking into a bunch of these corrupt prosecutors who all weaponize the DOJ at the behest of the Biden administration to go after their political opponents. So we got all of that. I got some reaction to this from these people, and this is an epic meltdown. Like, I'm not, generally a fan of listening to these people. I know you're not either, but this is a good one because Gunther Eagleman clip this one, and he says, I don't think I've ever seen this meltdown this bad like it we see here today on CNN. And so we'll go through it because, man, they're upset about it. Like, they forgot about everything that they've done. It's like they forgot about this image. Hello, you people started this. Now we're just cleaning up your mess. So we'll go through all of that. Then our friends over at Judicial Watch sent over some Fani updates for us. Fani land's not over yet. You're not out yet. We're not out yet. So we're going to keep our eye on this one, of course. And she just got an order. She better comply or else. We want those records transmitted about what she and her lover, who they were indicting each other, maybe during office hours, we don't know. But we want to know what they were talking about and who they were colluding with from the Biden administration. And so the court just came down and gave us a new update and a new order on it. We'll read through it. And then we'll hear from Mark Elias. Womp. Very upset. Hey, Mark, are you freaked out? He's like, yes, absolutely, I am. Yeah, because that's what happens for people who weaponized the law against their political opponents. They're going to, have to pay. It's the game. You're playing the game. So you play with fire, you get burned. Now here, we also got Fannyland. We've got a Pennsylvania update. So we got a mind map that we're going to be digging into today. There was a Third Circuit ruling that came down. And this is a curious one. It's out of Pennsylvania, and it was brought by a bunch of Democrats to sue. They said, we don't want dates on our ballots. So in other words, the law said have your date written on your ballot. Otherwise, it's not going to count because we can't tell if it's coming in late or fraudulent. It's part of the statute, right? Put it in there. But the judges go through this. The lefties sued. And we'll talk about who is a party to this case and all the things when we get into it. But basically, the Third Circuit is saying no dates on ballots. That's fine. You can't throw those ballots out. They still count, even if there is no date. So we'll go through the full decision. Of course, it comes from these people. Susan Baxter was the lower level judge. Patty Schwartz, she was over on the Court of Appeals. We got Ariana Freeman, who's a part of this. And then this is the only Bush appointee dude on the right, but he actually wrote the opinion on it. So no dates on ballots over there, courtesy of the Third Circuit. Then we got another update on Kilmar because Kilmar snapped during his arrest. We'll share what he said, but he was getting walked out of there, getting hopefully deported to Uganda. He had a deal. He could have stayed in El Salvador. He could have gone elsewhere, but he didn't. Could have voluntarily left like a bunch of other people already have, but he didn't. And now on his way out, his anger just kind of emerged, poked through the fake facade that they had for us that they were trying to shove down our gullets. So we'll talk about it. I'll take a look. We'll take a look at the court docket and the new briefing schedule on this because we know Judge Zenas is really throwing her weight around on this one. And she has ordered the Trump administration not to remove Kilmar or else. And so we'll get an update on what the next briefing schedule looks like. There's the docket that we were looking for. And perfect. All right, so we got that. And then Kristi Noem will help close out that segment with an update on Abrego and these deportations that are happening now. So, bunch of great stuff to get to today, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. If you haven't already done so, we would very much appreciate that. And we would also love it if you'd consider becoming a member. We have great members-only streams. Today, we had some scheduling problems. I think we're going to try to get the after party scheduled, but the YouTube studio is very problematic today, so we barely got this show scheduled and working. And I can't even see the stats on it because YouTube studio is down. But we should have an after party if hopefully it gets back up by the time we're done here. But we also had a great members-only stream today. So members, we do streams in the morning. We do streams on Saturday. We have an awesome community, and it's a great way to support the work that we're doing here, meet some cool people, and hang out with our, let our hair down a little bit in the mornings and chill out. So we'd love it if you joined us. Thanks for going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or on YouTube, you can click the join button, and we'll see you over there. Now, we've got a bunch of business to get to. So without any further ado, let's do it, shall we? Yeah, and Trump had a cabinet meeting today, man. That was like 3 hours, 4 hours? How long was that thing? All right, so YouTube studio still down, but we got business to attend to, and so let's get to it. Jack Smith is freaked. We know he's not a real boy at all, was disqualified from being a prosecutor of the president because of his illegal appointment, and now he's being investigated by the Trump administration for perverting his office, for taking a bunch of actions that he wasn't authorized to do, knowing he wasn't authorized to do it, and doing it anyways. And so the New York Times got their hands on a letter that his attorneys sent over to the Trump DOJ saying, our client's innocent, and Judge Chutkan also supported him. And in other words, a bunch of corrupt judges like him, and so therefore he's innocent. No, how about that is not how this works. And so we'll go back through this background here before we jump into the letter. I've got it queued up right here, along with reaction on this from others like President Trump himself, who is discussing Jack Smith in the Oval Office. But the New York Times says lawyers for Jack have struck back. Oh gosh, who wrote this? Dr. Seuss? Against some of the accusations conservatives have leveled against him, saying the ethics complaint is imaginary and unfounded. We'll see. Now, for months, Mr. Smith has remained silent. Yeah, we're waiting for him. As the president and some of his senior advisors, including public officials at the DOJ, have attacked him. On Monday, Smith's team sent a letter back to the special counsel, the office, which has no affiliation with his former position. Of course, he was the fake special counsel. And they conduct ethics investigations. And Senator Tom Cotton, who is the Republican senator from Arkansas, he said, you guys should look into Jack Smith. So he sent a letter to them. I think we read that one, saying, look into this guy. He's a bad dude. Mr. Smith and his lawyers, their names are Lenny A. Brewer and Peter Koski, fired back in a 3-page letter, right? So we'll read through it. They also wrote some other things. And so here's a little bit of background. Got it. Let's get to it. So here's the letter. Jack Smith's lawyers sending this one back over to the DOJ, the U.S. Office of the Special Counsel. They're saying, please don't prosecute our client. He didn't do anything wrong. He was trying to protect democracy. Dear Mr. Greer, they respond. This is Jack Smith's lawyers writing, so can add a little femininity to it. Says, we represent Jack Smith and write in response to recent press reports indicating that your office is investigating our client because he was the special counsel who corrupted the DOJ. Now, although you have not reached out to us to discuss these allegations, we know it's coming, is what they're saying. We welcome the opportunity to engage with your office, and we're confident that as you become familiar with the facts, you will conclude that there is no basis that Jack Smith violated the Hatch Act, and all of the allegations are wholly without merit. Mr. Smith, what he did was consistent with the decisions of a prosecutor who has devoted his career to following the facts and the law without fear or favor and without regard for the political consequences, not because of them. He wasn't even a U.S. attorney. He was completely illegitimate. He had no power to do anything that he did. Judge Cannon threw him out. Illegal. And that argument was made early on in the case, and he actually opposed that, right? And he was just kept marching forward, marching forward, marching forward. When there was a question about it, he should have sidelined himself. He didn't. He was their hatchet man. Okay, that's what Merrick Garland did. He brought in Jack Smith from The Hague to come in and do the dirty work, presuming that they were going to take out Trump, sideline him, and then Jack Smith would probably run the DOJ under the next administration at some point, right? Once Trump got taken out in 24, Jack Smith, Kamala's DOJ deputy director. Could you imagine that crap? And so that did not happen, obviously. But Jack Smith followed the same pattern that Merrick Garland already brought with David Weiss and other special counsels who were hacks, who didn't do anything. And even the one that they appointed, Robert Hur, to investigate Joe, was like, well, he's just dumb and he's elderly, so we can't prosecute him either. Okay, one after another. So Jack Smith was illegitimate. David Weiss, who they appointed to go investigate Hunter, was the same attorney on the case, making it a corrupt deal from the beginning. They're just like, well, we need a special counsel. You are already as corrupt as can be. You're already on the case, so how about we just make you the special counsel? And then they said, well, it's an independent investigation. You go, what? It's the same dude. You just gave him a new title. All right, so Jack Smith is a hack. We know it. Now, they're going to say he's not. It's the same pattern. He's illegitimate. A judge said he's not even a real boy. We understand from public press reports that your office launched this investigation because Tom Cotton sent you a letter. And he said, Mr. Smith's conduct, the senator from Arkansas, as special counsel, his conduct had no legitimate purpose, and it seemed to have no rationale except for an attempt to affect the 2024 election results. Yeah, and they also needed to get the Crossfire Hurricane documents back and all the Obama coup documents back that Trump had taken with him because he was the president, whether you call it declassifications or presidential records, or whether you just say the Constitution gives him permission to the writings, the opinions in writing of his staff in the Constitution, and they're his documents, okay? He was the president. Hillary Clinton was not. Vice President Joe was not. Senator Joe was not. But we know only one of them got raided. Hillary Clinton was never the president. Weird. But she didn't get raided. Now, a review of the record and the procedural history, and by the way, right, the rationale is, I think, much more of a recapture of compromise that would expose them. That's why they had to risk it, okay? Sending in, approving lethal force, not to go take out somebody, but if somebody, Secret Service or somebody starts firing back at these FBI cops, or somebody in Trump's private security starts, what's going on here? We're under attack. They could engage. That was the rules of engagement. So a review of the record in procedural history demonstrates the opposite. No, Mr. Jack Smith, who's not even a real boy, was fiercely committed to making prosecutorial decisions based solely on the evidence that they made up, has steadfastly followed applicable DOJ guidelines that they perverted, and principles of federal prosecution. No, they didn't. You guys, this was a first on a number of different levels. First search warrant for a president, first raid of a president's residence, first FBI agents rummaging through Melania's closet. Principles of federal prosecution right in the run-up to election. Give me a break. He did not let the pending election influence his investigative or prosecutorial decision-making. That's rich. He was racing both cases to trial. Judge Chutkin was saying, you have to squeeze this puppy in immediately so that trial could happen. And then when the appeal went up and the Supreme Court was going to take the case over, then, of course, she was colluding with Judge Juan the Khan Merchan in New York, and then they just tag teamed their trial dates, just like the other corrupt federal judges tag teamed the release of Kilmar, right? They just all kind of consolidate their lawfare attempts, and then they sit around at us and lecture us from their perches with their robes, saying that they're fair and impartial and good stewards of justice. The predicate for this investigation is imaginary and unfounded. Yeah, we're going to find out real fast. And it's interesting that they're jumping right into this. They're getting ahead of the investigation because they know it's coming. And there's nothing even good so far in here. Let's see. And I know we're taking our time on this one, but he says, Mr. Smith followed well-established legal principles. Now, again, it's all unprecedented. And the courts presiding over the resulting prosecutions have already rejected the spurious allegations that whatever Jack Smith did was somehow improper. And they say, notably, Senator Cotton does not allege that the criminal charges against Trump were politically motivated or that the indictments were without merit. Okay. Instead, well, Tom Cotton's not the prosecutor. He's asking for an investigation to be opened. Instead, his allegations focus on the mechanical steps required to prosecute a case. For instance, in support, Cotton cites unremarkable examples as Mr. Smith seeking, quote, special permission to exceed the normal maximum page limit, asking for a trial date 5 months after the indictment, moving for an expedited review by the appeals court. They say these are routine. They're consistent with and expected of a prosecutor who's prosecuting a case, and they were subject to court approval. Yeah, that's all ridiculous, because we know that the discovery alone in, for example, the January 6th case was millions of pages of documents, like 8 to 14 million. And remember, we were reading through Trump's defense team at the time. He was being, prosecuted not as the president. His private attorneys were saying that the amount of paperwork in the discovery against President Trump dwarfed cases like Walmart versus Visa, okay? Two of the biggest, most paper heavy, like it's a financial case, Walmart versus Visa. They put it in their filings. And they explained that those cases took 6-7 years to prosecute. They wanted this case from indictment to trial like in 5 months, 6 months, with millions of pages of discovery. And we had a big battle over it. And Judge Chutkan, she said, well, Molly, who works for Jack Smith, Molly Gaston, remember her? She was very good. She was very accommodating for you. And she made a table of contents for you. So therefore, you don't need to read all the documents because she already read them for you. And she's identified the prosecutor, the corrupt people who are prosecuting you. They've already made a table of contents for you. And that's all you need. All of that was unprecedented. They were racing to get it done. They wanted it done before the election so he could be a convicted felon. They had 4 attempts at it. And they're going to sit here and say it's all ordinary. All right. We are aware of no court decision or any other authority to interpret the Hatch Act to prohibit prosecutors from investigating allegations of criminal conduct. Okay, application of this unprecedented interpretation of the statute risks other investigations, and this interpretation is wrong. And so, okay, the investigation is premised on a partisan complaint that suggests the ordinary operation of the criminal justice system should be disrupted by the whims of a political contest. No. That's what Jack did. The notion that justice should yield to politics is antithetical to the rule of law. All right, this is turning into like a blog post, which is, we hate reading these from lawyers. Moreover, the suggestion that Hatch Act can be violated by taking routine procedural steps to prosecute a case involving a candidate for office is unprecedented and risks interfering with the enforcement of our federal criminal laws. How? We don't know. It's just talking. The court overseeing the prosecution in D.C., who was that? Judge Chutkan, who is a anti-Trump maniac, in my opinion, reaffirmed this bedrock principle that the justice system is not subservient to politics. Yeah, that was Judge Chutkan, the same person who was colluding with Jack. And by the way, when Trump had immunity, came back down, we had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, come back down. There's at least a presumption of immunity for the president. Judge Chutkan tried to bypass that, tried to allow Jack Smith to continue on. Jack Smith was continuing on, by the way. Remember that too? Jack Smith, when the case was on appeal, kept filing motions. Trump had to respond to him and tell Chutkan, stop it, Jack. You're acting outside of the scope of your power. And then she finally had to begrudgingly say, okay, stop it, Jack. So she was facilitating it. And then when the Supreme Court came back down and it became clear they were not going to have a trial before the election or be able to convict Trump, then Chutkan, the judge, authorized Jack Smith to drop like the 1,000-page dossiers right before the election and release his report, which was like a trial in the court of public opinion. The same judge and the same prosecution that had been lecturing everybody throughout the pendency of the case, screeching about how Trump needed to be gagged lest he talk badly and reveal information to the public. But then, when it became convenient for them and they needed to drop a dossier to take out Trump, she approved it, published it. Yeah, go ahead, release it. How many pages? However long you want. Make it like War and Peace. Nobody cares. And they did. They published it. Now, they thought that was going to be some big hit to Trump during the election. And it didn't work out because Joe Biden's brain broke right on the stage. And Kamala Harris never had a brain to begin with. And then they slotted her in there. And so they could have released 5 dossiers against Trump, and I don't think it would have mattered. but it doesn't take away from the fact that they were abusing their positions of power and their offices to take out their political opponent. The fact that they failed is the only reason we're going to have any repercussions for this and actual justice. But if they would have gotten their way, Kamala would have covered all this up. So they continue. They say that Trump is running a political campaign that must yield to the orderly administration of blah. In fact, courts have already considered and rejected the premise of Cotton's allegations. One court denied a motion to dismiss that alleged that the prosecution was selective and vindictive. And who was that? Oh, yeah, it was Judge Chutkan right there. She said the timing of this case, right? Trump said, Jack Smith is a partisan hack who is prosecuting me. Judge Chutkan said, no, he's amazing. And so now Jack Smith's lawyers are referencing Judge Chutkan. Now, with respect to the allegation that Smith sought to influence the election by moving for an expedited review by the appeals court and other things, and both agreed to expedite the appeals, the D.C. Circuit declared that delaying the trial date would be counterproductive, right? So they say, well, even the Court of Appeals, also corrupt out of D.C., well, they want the trial to happen too, because of course they did. And the allegation that Smith skirted the normal appellate process ignores the fact that this was the procedural path taken by other people. And, Jack Smith was trying to leapfrog some certain decisions, go to the Court of Appeals, go to the Supreme Court to get them to come back and rule on these things. And people are going, that's out of order. And the Supreme Court, if I remember correctly, also smacked him down on that. There, the Supreme Court granted petition. And so there's precedent, okay? Jack Smith was just doing what everybody else did, and so he's not a bad person. Given the lengthy procedural record and careful attention afforded to these issues by the judges overseeing these prosecutions, like Chutkan, and I noticed they didn't mention Judge Eileen Cannon in her order that Jack Smith was illegitimate. This office should not relitigate the baseless allegations that were unsuccessfully advanced before the federal courts, and they should certainly not be scrutinized in response to a partisan referral. And so they send this letter like, please don't prosecute. If you intend to go forward with this in any way, just let us know. They're hearing the rumors out there. We insist that you engage with us so that any finding by the special counsel is informed by the record. Okay, let us send you more letters. If you're going to indict us, let us know why, and we'll get you some paperwork. We are confident that an objective assessment of the facts will lead to the inescapable conclusion that the prosecutions that were brought by Jack were entirely lawful and appropriate. No, first of all, they were failures, and he was deemed illegitimate by a real judge who actually understood the law. Judge Chutkan, of course, is just an Obama-appointed partisan in the D.C. Circuit who was just playing that game. So, nice letter to the DOJ. The DOJ hopefully just says, well, this is interesting, read. Thank you for this. Well, we don't really need to engage with you. You'll get notice of these criminal charges when you get your subpoena, when you get an indictment. How about that? When you get a notice to appear, that's when we'll start to engage with you, and we can talk about a plea deal at that time. But here is how they sound over on CNN. And so I wanted to share a little bit of this with you. I know it's kind of painful to listen to these people, but they're freaked. All right, Jack Smith, you can see, is freaked. His lawyers, they're like reaching out. It's like, hey, I know you don't want to talk to us, but we really want to talk to you. And the DOJ is just leaving them on red. Just like, nope, DOJ just read it. Interesting. Are you there? I really, need to talk to you. It's pretty important. Please call me. I miss you. Whatever. Goes on and on. So they're getting nervous, sending letters, alerting that, they're on the case. And here are these people over here. And this was on CNN. And they're very nervous. You can hear it in their voices saying, Trump is coming after them. And let's see, why is this audio not playing? Here, this is why.
A criminal crusade against...
Unprecedented is all of this?
Well, this crusade, a criminal crusade against political adversaries is completely unprecedented in all of American history.
It is? It's unprecedented? I wonder if this guy remembers this photograph right here. Remember when Big Fani out of Georgia indicted 19 people? And remember when a bunch of other states did that too? Arizona, Chris Mays did it. Other states, I think Wisconsin did it. Remember when Bragg and Tishy, who just got backhanded by the Court of Appeals and had her entire judgment invalidated? Remember when she just got told? You remember that? Never in the history has it happened. Okay, they're just, they're just delusional, or they're just liars. It's not even a statement you can take seriously 1%.
I think that's true. Now, when the Bolton matter, I think in fairness to the Justice Department, it needs to be pointed out that those search warrants were approved by an independent magistrate, both in New York and in Washington and Maryland. So there was at least some check observed. But when you look at the full range of criminal investigations, whether it's Senator Adam Schiff or New York Attorney General Tish.
Yeah, so he's not saying that they just raided Bolton's house illegally. They got a warrant. They went to a judge. Judge, we think that the walrus has classified documents stuffed behind his stash. Can we go in and investigate? It's like, yeah, I've always thought there was something behind that. So yeah, go in there. And that's a check and balance. How is this authoritarianism? How is this unprecedented? You could make the argument Jack Smith went and got the same check from Bruce down in Florida.
James or Lisa Cook, the Fed governor who was the president attempted to fire today. Whether that's legal is a separate question. Miles Taylor, who's on tonight. All of these are political adversaries under criminal investigation. And I should add to that list Barack Obama, whom the president said committed treason and is now under investigation. This kind of crusade against enemies is absolutely unprecedented.
Ridiculous.
Miles, how concerned or what happened to Bolton could happen to you?
Anderson, we think it's likely. I mean, we think that there's a decent chance. I mean, if past is any indicator of what the president's done, we think this is certainly possible. But one of the things I want to point out is I think people can get a little disassociated from this whole thing when they focus on the elites who are being targeted. Maybe it worries the average American that John Bolton or Chris Christie or Senator Schiff or Miles Taylor is being targeted, but they don't think it really affects them. That's where I think people are wrong. This is affecting them. In the United States of America, you don't need a permission slip to criticize the president of the United States.
Okay, I don't even know what he's talking about now. Their party went and rounded up Americans who were peacefully protesting at the Capitol. So if he's going to make the argument that it's like, well, they came for them first and I didn't object, and they came for them and I didn't object, and now they're going to come for you, little Americans. I think their party has a much broader history of that. Trump is removing illegal aliens and sending out the National Guard to clean up the streets, but they are struggling, man. And you can just kind of hear the freaked out voice that they have. And so we don't need to listen to any more of it, but you get the gist. Now, here is what Trump had to say about Jack Smith from the Oval Office. President Trump explaining what he thinks about Jack.
어떻게 작동했나를 확인한 것 같습니다. 나중에 좀 더 자세히 설명을 드리도록 하겠습니다. So it hasn't been long since Korea has overcame the political turmoil following the self-coup by the former president. Currently, there is a fact-finding investigation by a special prosecutor that was appointed by the National Assembly. And this special prosecutor...
Is his name deranged Jack Smith by any chance? they took him from our country. They put deranged Jack. He's a deranged, sick individual. But go ahead. Go ahead. I'm only kidding. Maybe I'm not.
And that special prosecutor is not under my control. And so the special prosecutor is conducting a fact-finding investigation. And I would like to explain about what you said about U.S. bases. They did not conduct a search and seizure.
All right, so we don't know if they've got their own version of a deranged Jack Smith over there, but Trump definitely calling out Jack Smith in the Oval Office, and we're going to keep our eye on that one. But of course, we know they are the people who launched the political attacks. They waged a full-blown war against one man and everybody who supported him in the aftermath of January 6th. They went after peaceful protesters. They went after parents at school board meetings. They went after pro-lifers. They went after people who objected to COVID. They had cops showing up at gyms and hair salons. Are you cutting hair in there? Insanity. And they're going to say that Trump sending the National Guard out or prosecuting the actual criminals who lied and perverted the law for an entire term are innocent victims. We don't think so. And so we're excited to see some developments on it. Jack Smith sounds nervous. It sounds like maybe they know something's coming. They're hearing the rumors out there. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, we got more business to attend to. We're happy to see that they're freaked out. You know who else is probably freaked out? Big Fani. And here is the story back from Fani. Back in Fani land, she's been ordered by the court to turn over some records, and she really doesn't want to turn over those records because there were a lot of them. We know thousands of text messages, maybe photos, voicemails, videos, and a bunch of other things back and forth, including messages and questions about what she was doing with Nathan Wade, her lover, who she hired and then paid $700,000 for and then had 2-hour lunch work meetings, and then shared residences and lied about all of it, committed perjury, didn't declare all sorts of expenditures. The list goes on, we recall. But we have questions about what she was doing, who she was talking to, was she colluding with the Biden administration to indict Trump and go after him, and how deep does this go? So our friends over at Judicial Watch, including Tom Fitton, you know who he is. They say, we announced that a Georgia state court has now ordered Fani to give us some new information related to the Trump records, because she sent in an affidavit, right? She says, well, I have no records. But the problem with her response is that she doesn't mention, did she search certain devices? Did she look at Nathan Wade's device or not? Did she look at Michael Hill's device? So Judicial Watch issued a lawsuit. They sued. And the court order was issued after Judicial Watch sued. And they awarded $21,000 to Judicial Watch for attorney's fees, baby. Shout out. The new court order came down, and let's take a look at it now. Here is what we got from Fani land. Judicial Watch versus Fani Willis, the biggest Fani in all of Georgia. Fani is now ordered to comply. Here's the background. 2 years ago, Judicial Watch submitted an open records request to Fani. They wanted all documents and communications sent to or related to Jack Smith, the illegitimate prosecutor, who's freaked out. All documents and communications also sent over to the January 6th Select Committee, also filled with criminals. However, they were pardoned. The defendant, Fani, initially claimed to have no responsive records. I don't know what you're talking about. Nathan Wade? Nathan who? Doubting this for the very good reason that it already had a responsive document in its possession, they sued. Judicial Watch says, we know you have records because we have a copy of one of them. They sued, and they have since secured a default judgment against Fani. Okay, so Fani basically lost by default because she wasn't providing materials, wasn't responding. And the court says it turns out she does have responsive records. Fani busted. On March 7, 2025, after hearing about the desultory efforts to determine the full universe of responsive information, this court ordered Fani, all right, Fani Willis, you get your Fani in here and you produce for in-camera review the records that we want to see. After repeated denials of their existence, but which were being withheld on the basis of being exempt from disclosure, she says, oh, yeah, so the court is like calling her out on that. She says, oh, well, I actually do have records, says Fani, because she's a liar, which were being withheld because there's other laws that say we can just withhold them. But she said they didn't exist. Okay, it's different. They exist, but you're not entitled to them is different than they do not exist. So what happened is Fani then complied with the March order. She gave the court an affidavit from her lawyer, and the lawyer summarized the steps that they took. They said, we did an actual, meaningful search of the information. And they also gave a digital storage device back over to the court. And that device contained 212 pages of search protocols, emails, text messages, and written correspondence. So Fani delivered some materials over. The court has since reviewed these materials and concurs with Fani. At this point, given that the criminal case related to these materials remains open, but even if not particularly active, like the cases are open, a lot of it's on appeal. Fani says, I want to stay on the case, or we'll see what the court says. Specifically, the court finds that the documents are records of law enforcement and their records. So she did turn over some things, but Fani's work is not done yet, however, says this judge. So thanks for complying a little bit. But in reviewing these materials, in particular, the search protocols prepared by each of the defendants whose records and devices were reviewed, the court notices you're missing some things, Fani. Saying this, there was no search protocol produced for or by the investigator called Michael L. Hill. Michael L. Hill, indicating what accounts, devices were searched for and for what terms were they. It is also unclear if anyone consulted with Nathan Wade, Nathan's hot dogger lover, who is now employed elsewhere, but who at all relevant times was, among other things, the lead counsel for her office's investigation into possible criminal disruptions that occurred back during the 2020 election. So they're missing all of Nathan Wade. If anyone consulted with Nathan at all, no one even checked. It's like, he's pretty critical. He's the other half of the mama jama, the hibbity dibbity. Like, it takes two to have a hibbity dibbity. You can't have only one. So we need to know. And he was the special prosecutor, okay? He's pretty important to the entire investigation. She appointed him to lead it. Nobody talked to the investigator. Nobody consulted Nathan Wade. Her office is a joke. We've already known that, but it's like, what the heck? Like, I can't even believe these judges are just being so happy, kind of nonchalant about it. So they say, while legal counsel's affidavit avers that defendant's own records were searched, like Fani's like, well, I searched my text messages. The responsive materials do not include the search protocol that was used to do so, nor the scope of the search described. Okay, so Fani then just searches for like Smith, goes in her email, says Smith. I'm like, well, got a, blacksmith, John Smith is not Jack Smith. Iron Smith. Okay. Goes through, but nothing responsive. Responds, and that's it. They say, well, what did you search for, Fani? Give us some details on this. And so consequently, Fani gets an order, okay? Within 14 days of this order, Big Fani, you shall submit to the court the search protocols, the search terms used, and the data sources searched for Hill, the lead investigator. And we want clarification. Did you search Nathan Wade, your hot dog lover's materials or not? If they were not, they shall be, okay? Go get his records. Those are long gone. Those were deleted a long time ago. And any responsive records forwarded to the court. If they already were, then the same requirement of supplying the search protocol applies. Like, you can't just say I did a search and then give us nothing. Any additional materials that are generated by this effort will be received in camera to the judge only and will remain in camera pending an analysis similar to the one the court performed on the first set of submitted materials. All records, make sure they're labeled. This court will review these materials, and if any of these materials are disclosable, like if the public can read them, we're going to notify Fani so that she may file a justification for the redactions. Any such pleadings will be filed under seal and shall be submitted pursuant to the March order clarifying what Fani must do, from Judge Robert C.I. McBurney. And this looks like it's a prior affidavit that they submitted. Yeah, so this is like Fani's affidavit. Yeah, so hey, my name is Andrea Olaby, and that is the person who says, I did the search and I found everything, and I searched a couple people here, a couple people at Fani's office. We've submitted a couple things to you. And based on my review, we've done our job, right? So they say not good enough. So go back, give it a second attempt, and get us those records. Now, Fani Willis was part of a multi-pronged effort to try to take out the Democrats' political opponent, President Trump, and anybody who supported him. And they launched a series of investigations. Okay, this is Andrew Weissman. You remember him. He was part of the Mueller team. And this was the guy who's so dumb, he couldn't remember his cell phone password. And he just kept entering it in there. I'm so dumb. I'm Andrew Weissman. I can't remember a 4-digit code. Oh, the phone deletes everything. Interesting. And then that same thing happened to a bunch of other people on the Mueller investigation because they were corrupt. They were leaking information to the media, and they were trying to ensnare and prosecute people illegally and illegitimately. And now look at his sour scowl. Man, you're busted, boy. You can see it on his face. Mark Elias. These two look like they're having a rough time out there, for sure. And so let's listen in on them about how freaked out they are. Once again, shout out to Gunther Eagleman over on X for watching these shows so that we don't have to, and then clipping out the best parts for us. We appreciate that. But here is a little bit of this. You can hear how freaked they are.
MSNBC political analyst Kim Atkins-Storr is here. Mark Elias, I'm going to start with you because you've been attacked by Donald Trump in a speech he delivered at the Department of Justice. Do you feel the way Miles Taylor feels, that it could happen to you?
Absolutely. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, I was Hillary Clinton's general counsel in 2016.
She's getting indicted too.
And for that, for the privilege, and it was a genuine privilege of representing Secretary Clinton, Donald.
Yeah, and you guys created the fake Steele dossier allegation. Mark Elias was working for Perkins Coie. His number two essentially was Michael Sussman. Michael Sussman and the Perkins Coie people hired Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS then went and got the Steele dossier, which was the fake hoax. And they were working for Hillary Clinton. They were Hillary Clinton's lawyers. So they generated the whole thing. Michael Sussman went to the FBI to collude with James Baker, who was over there, and tried to feed him a fake story, propaganda. Well, that ultimately made its way into the FBI and became a part of the intelligence assessment that Obama ordered to try to create the Russian collusion hoax, okay? All of it, which led back to Mueller, which was where Weissman was working on, okay? They're all in this gigantic, disgusting, incestuous circle, and they're now very upset that they got caught.
Trump created an entire, criminal investigation that John Durham ran that went after me and others. It didn't indict me. It did indict others who got acquitted.
Michael Sussman got charged and acquitted, and you should have been indicted. The fact that Durham didn't indict you, in my opinion, Durham should have indicted a lot more people. And he didn't. He covered up. We're just learning stuff from the Durham Annex. James Comey should have been indicted.
But he has threatened essentially to bring that back. In 2020, I represented Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in defeating Donald Trump more than 60 times in court.
Yeah, and we covered a lot of those lawsuits. And my friends, this is happening again right now. So we're watching this warm up. We talked about it this morning on the member stream about what's happening in Utah. Just recently, judge ordering new maps, and lawsuits are being filed. We're going to talk about it in the next segment about the League of Women Voters. Like, they're all coming back in full force. And so you got enough of Mark Elias. We all know what he sounds like, but they just sound and they look terrible. It's like, man, I don't know, not getting some sleep, probably stress eating, stress drinking. But between him and Weissman, they're having a rough time over there. Well, they should. They shouldn't break the law. All right, so that's the update on Fani Land. Of course, we're going to keep our eye on this one. She better get those records over immediately, and hopefully the court publishes them so that we can read them and see how disgusting they are. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, let's continue on, my friends. We got another pretty sizable update on this one, and this one comes from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. And here's what it looks like. Yeah, here's what this one is. A major election decision coming down from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So this has made its way up, and now the higher court, not the Supreme Court yet, is making this ruling that really could be precedent for a bunch of different states over inside the Third Circuit. So it's a big one. And what's so curious about this is that they're saying that if you have a law that says you have to put a date on your ballot when you go to vote, and you don't, the original interpretation before this decision came down was that ballot doesn't count, okay? You can't fill out your ballot appropriately, so it doesn't count. It's disqualified. Like, fill it out appropriately, get it in on time, or otherwise it doesn't count. This is the same thing that applies basically everywhere in life. Like if you don't pay your car insurance, it lapses. If you don't pay your electricity bill, they shut it off. You got to comply with the normal conditions of being an adult. Putting a date on the ballot to verify that you signed it at a certain date and time, so we have a record of that, is part of the statute, but not anymore. Here is what went down in this case. So a bunch of people sued. It's a big opinion. It's 55 pages. And so let's just hit a quick mind map update and get our bearings straight on the case before we dive in to a little bit of the opinion. So where did this start? How did it all go down? Well, here's where it's originating from. The Western District of Pennsylvania. And we've got these judges who I'll show you more about. At the lower level court, it was this woman. Her name is Susan Baxter. And so she made the original decision. And let's see who appointed her. Trump appointed her back in 2018. And so the lower level decision worked its way up through her. And now we're at the Court of Appeals. Now the Court of Appeals has these three people on it. This woman is called Patty Schwartz. She was appointed by Barack Obama. And she went to the University of Pennsylvania. She's on the case. We also have this woman, Ariana Freeman, also made the decision. She was appointed by Joe Biden in 2022, and she went to Yale. Then we got this guy who's actually going to author the decision, and this is a Bush appointee who has been in there since 2002 and was previously the chief judge, and now he's writing the decision. So we've got the parties. We know who they are. Now, of course, the question is about who is involved, really, and it's a bunch of lefty groups. Let me show you who is behind a lot of this. The people suing are the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. They hate dates on ballots because then they can't bring in a bunch of ballots that have no dates on them. The DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, AFT Pennsylvania, and others. Okay, they're all suing. We saw this happen a lot back in 2020. These private groups come in and sue, right? And the state boards are friendly boards. And so they start making these decisions. And of course, now we're up in the Court of Appeals. So we have a bunch of people also as amicus. And I wanted to share this. So for keeping the law the same, we have just a couple people, not even anybody really that stands out to us. But on the other side, all of these Democrat interests are crashing into this, just to share. Pennsylvania Department of State Black Political Empowerment Project, Common Cause Pennsylvania, League of Women Voters, Power Interfaith, Pennsylvania NAACP, and the rest of them, right? Why are they so opposed to dates on ballots? I don't know. Maybe because they don't want election integrity to happen. And so the core details of this, of course, is about mail-in ballots. And the question is about current Pennsylvania law, which up until today said that you would discard undated or misdated envelopes. If they came in, you throw them out. They give us a lot of historical context in the case, and it starts out back in 1937. And in 1937, they originally had military ballots that they approved for absentee military service members. 1945, they added return envelopes. 1963, they extended absentee voting. So just like military service members, if you have an enumerated circumstance, you can vote absentee. 1968, there was a timeliness act, and it said that timeliness, it needed to be received on election day. And it removed the set-aside requirement for missing and incorrect dates. So then they're going to say, okay, from about 1968 to 2019, that entire time, and the judges love to do this, it's been this way for so long. Roe versus Wade was the law for 60 years, whatever, remember? And now you changed it. Okay, that's right. The legislature did. They passed Act 77, and it enacted universal mail-in voting. And they retained in that act, fill out, date, and sign. In the law, in the language of the statute, okay, including a date. And so we've got questions about what happens with all of these ballots that have come through. And we got some numbers on this. In 2022, over 10,000 ballots were discarded. In 2024, 4,500 ballots were discarded. And in Pennsylvania, there's no opportunity for a voter to go cure the deficiency and they can't go vote in person. Okay, this is what the court is fleshing out for us. So there are some actual consequences, like people are not putting dates on it, and their vote is not counting. Now, we got the procedural history on this. We know it came back down from the lower level judge. Eakin sued, RNC intervened, Attorney General opted not to intervene. The district court found for the people suing and then said, you can no longer discard ballots, right? If a ballot comes in that is missing a date, you got to throw it out. So there's a bunch of legal analysis in this. Of course, we've got the balancing test here. So there's really, what is the standard? So Act 77, is it legitimate or not? We have to have a balancing test. The constitutional rights of the people to go vote versus the state's interest in having election integrity, right? There's a balance here. Yes, you got a constitutional, process right to go vote. Doesn't mean you have unfettered, like you can't vote anytime you want, wherever you want. There's limitations to it. But what is the extent of the burden on that constitutional right? And how do you measure those things out? So they spend a lot of time on that in the decision. We'll fast forward through it. Saying here, the DOJ, or in this case, this is the basically the Pennsylvania legislature who's kind of representing the other end on this. In other words, the state that wants to preserve the dates on the ballots. They say we're allowed to do this, and it's all legitimate, okay? It's a de minimis burden. It's not actually a burden. All you have to do is fill out a date. It's not even a big deal. Of course, the court comes down and gives us their conclusion. And so let's jump into the decision a little bit now that we have it here. So background has been laid out, and we're fast forwarding through a lot of the header until we get to the opinion of the court drafted by Smith, the Bush appointee and the circuit judge. He says, all right, everybody, the ballot is a building block of our democracy. There's that word again. Perhaps no civic act has greater importance. And you start to ask yourself, it's like, is this decision so wrong because the judge doesn't know that we don't live in a democracy? How is he using that term? I don't know. Perhaps no civic act has greater importance or consequences than the casting of a ballot. Our Constitution calls upon the states to regulate the mechanics of how its citizens cast their ballots so those citizens can meaningfully express their voices. George Washington once called this the last great experiment in promoting human happiness. But our Constitution also calls upon the courts to scrutinize these regulations. We want to make sure that voters are not being burdened. And this inquiry is often a difficult one. It requires the courts to balance the constitutionally mandated duty against a constitutionally protected right. But we have to make these decisions. And this one is a hard judgment. We have to determine if Pennsylvania's requirement that mail-in ballots arrived in undated or misdated return envelopes be discarded. So we have to balance these out. And so weighing the burden that the practice imposes on Pennsylvania's constitutional rights, the burden on voting versus the practicality of making sure that the ballots have dates on them, the balance of the scales leads us to hold that it does not comply with our Constitution. And so we therefore affirm the judgment of the district court, saying that ultimately this balance weighs in favor of removing the dates, or you actually have to count the ballot. So it's superfluous. It doesn't even matter at all. The decision says, throughout the entire opinion, says the state interests do not justify the burden, right? The state is saying, well, we want to make sure that the ballots are accurately counted. They actually say, the court, that the date requirement hampers efficiency. It adds no solemnity beyond the signature. It doesn't even detect fraud or have any deterrence effect at all. And you might even make the argument like, well, if somebody's filling out a ballot, wouldn't you just backdate it? Like if it's illegal, just put a date on it. Like, oh yeah, November 2nd. Yeah, whatever. And then, fill that out. But that's another thing to check, right? Like it's another indicia of fraud. It's another mark on the document. Thousands of proper ballots disqualified. And they said that's a real risk, okay, where people are not being allowed to vote. And so they affirm the lower level judgment. And here, as we'll fast forward all the way down to the conclusion, we'll take a look at what the court is ultimately ordering here, because they give us a summary. They say the date requirement imposes a burden on the constitutional right to vote, so we can't allow it. It culminates in county election boards discarding thousands of ballots every time we have an election. Maybe you should fill it out accurately, like anything else. The date requirement will not protect against the vast majority of attempts at voter fraud. And another case where there was voter fraud, it was only an extremely rare instance involving a hapless fraudster who gets a recently deceased voter mail-in ballot, completes the ballot, adds a date on the return envelope, post-dating the deceased voter's death. Over 6 years and across multiple elections in which thousands of Pennsylvanians have voted, this fact pattern has appeared only once. So any other case law, it's like, well, it's not really a common thing that's happened here. So that one case is not really applicable. We have, as we know, a weighing test. Even where it's a minimal burden, just signing a date is all. That invites less scrutiny in our weighing of the interest. But the Commonwealth, there's one bizarre instance of the date requirement helping the Commonwealth prosecute a criminal case. But this can't justify the burden of affecting thousands of Pennsylvania voters every election, which is very interesting. It's like, well, court, how many of these cases are they investigating? Honestly, how many resources are they going towards investigating voter fraud there? Just because you haven't found them doesn't mean that there's not fraud happening. Finally, we note that the district court's order only prevents county election boards from setting aside ballots. It does not affect what appears to be the return envelopes or prevent future return envelopes. And so the Commonwealth may continue printing return envelopes with a date field, and it may continue to utilize the date field in detecting fraud. But even if it's only marginal utility, like it's not, checking dates doesn't actually matter, they say, which is not their prerogative, right? This is the legislature, which wrote date in there. So they're just overriding them. Recall that here you go again, right? Roe versus Wade for 60 years, 1978 to 2019. It's been uninterrupted. And yeah, it's been abused. That's why the legislatures want to start fixing these things. And so in summary, the court says, the proffered state interest in facilitating election efficiency, promoting solemnity, detecting and deterring voter fraud is not enough. The date requirement, simply writing a date, seems to hamper rather than facilitate election efficiency. Well, it is another thing to check, right? Obviously, so there's a reason for that. By its nature, it fails to add solemnity to the process of voting. And you have to sign your date on everything you sign. Everything. You go to the bank. And discarding thousands of ballots every election is not a reasonable trade-off when there's just very rare fraud. They write, in modern times, every election cycle is witness to thousands of Pennsylvanians voting. They drop their mailed ballot in the mailbox, and they hope it's going to be count. But this date requirement, now, because somebody has an inadvertent typographical error, or they flipped a number, or even a stray pen mark in the date field, that voter may not have their ballots counted and may never be the wiser. And so our government has to babysit them, right? It's like if you don't pay your registration fee for your car, does the government just like, well, that date is kind of irrelevant. It's complicated for you to go pay your vehicle registration. Think that works for you? Or do they cite you and give you a ticket for that? Yeah, because it's the requirement of being an adult. Casting a ballot and having it counted are central to the democratic process. And while we acknowledge a state's unique role in administering elections, we're going to violate it. Courts are sometimes called to make difficult decisions like this one, which is overriding the legislature. Decisions like the one at hand that seek to weigh these interests with an eye towards safeguarding the democratic process, which has been perverted to allow illegal aliens to vote, people who can't even add a date to the ballot suddenly have competency. It's also a competency thing. If you can't fill out your ballot appropriately and sign a date, you maybe shouldn't be voting, right? Like if you don't know what year it is and you can't figure out how to write a date, you just don't put the ballot in the box, okay? We don't want your vote. Like honestly, it's like a competency thing. And we're allowed to have election integrity in our country. This case is no exception. The Commonwealth has raised legitimate interests related to voting, but it's only tangential to the date. Everybody else requires a date, but not these Pennsylvanians. Weighing these interests against the burden, we can't justify discarding the ballots if they've got missing or incorrect dates. And so they're going to count. We will affirm the lower level court's judgment, and the undated ballots from dumb Democrats who can't fill out the forms appropriately or who are committing voter fraud now count. And this is not the legislature changing this. They wrote date in the law. The court said it. But the date is a little bit too dictatorial, and it's authoritarian, and it's undermining the democratic process. And did he say democratic process up here? I don't think he did. I think he said democratic country. What did he say? Let's go back to that opening sentence. What did he write? Okay, building block of our democracy. Got it. They shifted it at the end to democratic process, right? Because it's not a democracy. We're not a direct democracy, which would be a disaster, because then you have tyranny of the majority, and we don't want that. We already have a lot of that going on anyways. So this is happening everywhere, my friends. I'm flagging it because I think we're going to see an acceleration of this as the midterms come up, as the redistricting lawsuits get underway. We're going to have these battles happening everywhere, and it's just little chinks in the armors, like death by 1,000 cuts. You just extend the ballot deadlines 3 days. So what? You just add some ballot drop boxes. You just modify the signature requirements in certain states or the date requirements in other states. And by 1,000 cuts, then all of a sudden you have rigged elections that are not even representative of the people. So we'll keep our eye on this. Hopefully the Republicans appeal this, this all brought by the ACLU and the rest of them, up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court can settle this. We'll keep our eye on it. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends, one final update on the day, and then we're going to hear from you. And there better not be an ad playing right now. I'm not going to be happy about that, because we got a live, there it goes, because we got a live stream that we need to get into. Starting now. Kilmar snaps on the way to his flight over to Uganda. You can see this is a scene of him being escorted out to holding by an ICE agent, and he is not happy about it. And a lot of the people on the left have been creating this facade about this fella, like he's a Maryland man who works in a union, who loves his wife, doesn't beat her at all, doesn't threaten the kids. She's never filed multiple orders of protection against him or anything. And then the facade crumbles. On his way out, listen to what he mutters to the camera. Oh! Well, then why are you here, dude? Why did you illegally come into our country if you think our government is corrupt? And that's what he said. It's a corrupt government. That's interesting. Well, how come you fled your government? Is your government better? Your government's not corrupt? Then go there! Get out! Go back to your own government. Our government was corrupted. The people who allowed you to come in, the people at the FBI who allowed you to traffic humans and children and abuse them throughout our country, they're the corrupt ones. You're not a citizen. You've got no claim to be a citizen. You had plenty of due process multiple times. You had entire hearings. You were adjudicated by Judge David Jones. You had appeals. You had bond hearings. The guy had more due process than anybody, and has a premium version of a presumption of innocence. He's got judges colluding to let him out of custody. One judge in Tennessee releases him. Judge Zenas puts a protective force field over him and then strips the power away from the president to actually conduct the deportation in accordance with the law. The guy has lawyers crashing their cars in to represent him because he's become the Democratic cause du jour. He is their party. He represents what they stand for, which is a total degradation of America, an adoption of perverted, disgusting behavior. That's a symbol of their version of excellence. And now he's in here calling our government corrupt for finally not being corrupt and enabling his criminality. Bye. New York Post gave us that document. And so here is what else they tell us. They got footage of him. It's gone viral. He's 30 years old, El Salvadoran native. And now he's about to be Uganda. The Department of Homeland Security shared a video of him shuffling through the ICE field office. He says the government is corrupt. He doesn't belong here. He's not going to be staying here. And good riddance to him, said Homeland Security, which we appreciate. Now, someone else said on X, Kilmar is nothing but a petulant child. Totally. Yeah, he's so corrupt that he still wants to stay here. He has the gall to mutter corrupt government. Criminals don't get to call anyone else corrupt, as he broke into our country after beating his American citizen wife, according to her, not us. So we got a question about what's coming next in his case, because we know Judge Zenas is again inserting herself into this thing. And Trump's DOJ submitted this proposal from Zachary Cardine over from the Immigration Litigation Division, sending this one back in, saying, here is our proposed schedule. Saying, we just know that Kilmar yesterday filed a habeas petition with this court. He's saying my due process rights are being attacked. Now, we propose, says the DOJ, that Homeland would agree not to remove him during the pendency of his administrative proceedings and this court's habeas case. He's filed a motion to reopen his immigration case before the immigration judge, David Jones, who David Jones never made an order. Like if David Jones, the judge who granted Kilmar the withholding of removal to Guatemala, if he was upset that Kilmar was in El Salvador, where's Judge David Jones saying the DOJ is violating my order? How come they didn't submit a filing to him saying, can you please do something? They're violating your order. It's because they're not violating his order. He was lawfully sent to El Salvador. The parties would allow that the request be resolved administratively by the immigration judge. Now, if the request is to reopen is denied by the judge, Homeland and the petitioner would complete these other procedures. And if the proceedings before Homeland do not result in relief from removal, then he can file again. Then we'd have 14 days, then 7 days, then a hearing in 21 days. And we would, it's like, oh my gosh, all this due process. Okay, so screeching from the other side about this is a violation of the Constitution. Look at all this process they're going to give to this dude. He should have been in Uganda yesterday. Should have never come back from El Salvador. The court would then set the amended petition for 21 days and he would be detained pending the resolution of this. Now, he has not yet even spent 6 days in immigration detention, and we got 6 months to handle this. Now, we would agree to detain him in Maryland, that's fine, but we would agree not to remove him pending the outcome of the case, which is all standard. They're ordered to do that anyway. So that's the latest over there. We had Kristi Noem, who was talking about this fella, and here is what she had to say from Homeland.
I don't understand it either, Sean. And in fact, let's not forget that Abrego Garcia also solicited minors, children, for naked pictures, for pornography. I mean, he's a sick individual that's known to be a terrorist and a human trafficker. And these Democrats and liberals stand beside him. They sing for him. They chant for him to be released so that he can perpetuate more crimes on our communities. It's just overwhelmingly these woke activists will be rejected and they will not be elected or supported by the American people, because I'm out on the streets every single day with our law enforcement officers. I'm out there talking to individuals and meeting with victims of these crimes, and they're so thankful that they have President Trump in the White House. They're so thankful that they have a president that's finally enforcing the law and putting American citizens first, not terrorists like Abrego Garcia. I don't understand.
Shout out to Kristi Noem. We appreciate her. She's crushing it over there at Homeland. Border crossings like zero. She's on the cables every day saying, get out of our country, not mincing words about it. And we're hopeful that they continue and remove this illegal alien, wife-beating gangbanger, human trafficker from our country. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. What
And either Sean and in fact,
what a beautiful stream it has been today. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about. We had this beautiful letter from Jack Smith's lawyers, and he is freaked out. You can see they are sending a preemptive letter over to the special counsel's office, which hasn't even really announced anything official yet, and saying, please talk to us because we don't want our client to be charged. And here's the reason why, because liberal judges who hate Trump say he's a good person, so please don't charge him. We'll see what ultimately happens there. We know Trump was the victim of political prosecutions along with a bunch of other innocent people in this country, and there needs to be repercussions for that violation of the law and obligation to uphold the law. We also then talked about Fani and Fanny Land and Nathan Wade's records, because apparently when Fani responded over to a demand to send the records that was ordered by the court, she only did a very cursory search of maybe her materials and some other office people. But other than that, they didn't include the materials from the lead investigator or Nathan Wade. And those, of course, are pretty important and pertinent to the case, which is still on appeal. So hopefully those records are delivered. She's got 14 days to do it. We talked about it. Then we went over to the Third Circuit and talked about this case, which is, a troubling one because this battle is always this tension between voter enfranchisement on one end and voter integrity on the other end. Massive tension between the two. These are pushing us more towards voter enfranchisement, not voter integrity. And we got plenty of voter enfranchisement. We got too much voter enfranchisement. So we need more integrity. And what happened out of the Third Circuit is they said, no, dates don't have to be on the ballots. And if you forget your date or you're too dumb to put it on there, then what happens is your ballot will count. Even though the state legislature said it does not count, you actually have to fill out the ballot appropriately if you want your ballot to count. So we read through the full decision or some of it and hit the highlights in the mind map before we turned our attention to Kilmar Abrego wife-beater who snapped on his way out. Corrupt government. Well, that's fine. You don't have to be here in our corrupt government anymore. You can go over to Uganda and you can enjoy their government, which I'm sure will be much more to your liking. And it's been a beautiful day, my friends, and an amazing stream. And thank you for being here. Now it's time to see what you have to say about all of this and more. And thank you for sending in donos and super chats and supporting our work here. You're amazing, and we appreciate you. And Donut and John, and we got Bill Tongs in the house. What a beautiful day it is. And Donut reminding us that Snoopy is in the house, and Snoopy is wishing you a terrific Tuesday. Laugh with your eyes, smile with your soul, hug with your heart, and love with your spirit. Beautiful. I feel much more calm right now, automatically. Thank you for that. Tim Jake, what's up? A few hours ago, U.S. District Court Judge Adelman denied a motion to dismiss the federal case against Judge Hannah Dugan, Backdoor Dugan. So a trial on obstruction charges can proceed. That's great news. We'll talk about that tomorrow, no doubt about it. Yeah, we haven't had a Backdoor Dugan update in a while, so we got to do it. Chubby, thank you for that, Tim Jake. So she filed a motion to dismiss. Remember, this is the judge who took that illegal outer back door. And she said, I have judicial immunity. I can do whatever I want because Trump has presidential immunity. So the same thing applies to me. What? Judge didn't buy it, obviously. Thank you for the heads up on that, Tim Jake. Chubby Stubby says, the scary part of Kilmar's sissy fit is that it's looking like he's starting to get emboldened by the leftist support. Yeah, dude, he was out there yesterday telling him, thank you for fighting for me. It's like he's like a civil rights leader or something like that. What? You're an illegal alien. I think, honestly, that's what the end game is. That's why they're rallying around this guy so much. Like, he is their new civil rights leader. Like, they want illegals to not be illegal anymore. And that's the whole game, is they're trying to say, well, it's a due process problem to have people here illegally. And if you can stall it out, practically, you have no border. Anyways, so yeah, and he's fight for me, fight for me, fight for me. No telling what an evil human trafficking criminal like him could end up doing. Yeah, he snapped, right? The whole little facade is starting to crumble. Good to see you, Chubby. What's up? Sharon Drury in the house. Sharon, thank you for becoming a supporter. Grab that members only stream from this morning. Chubby says, did you hear about the recent Ninth Circuit ruling about Attach's son? A few are opening that it could help with the Trump administration with the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship. I don't think so, Chubby. I don't think so. Ninth Circuit, I don't think so. I don't think we've hit them recently. But thanks for the heads up on that, Chubby. We'll look into it. Anything, what's up? Anything, supporting us over on Rumble. You're amazing. Thank you, Anything, for doing that. And thanks for watching on the Rumbles. Bucky's is Rome. According to other lawyers on X, this judge is highly hostile to the defense, and they are speculating that she is going to take a plea deal pretty damn quickly if she pleads out or is found guilty. Is that the end of her being able to be a judge or practice any sort of law? I think it depends. I mean, I think that it kind of depends on the pressure that's put upon her. So, judges can get in trouble and be on remedial plans and stuff like that. Like, it's not, you do a speeding ticket, you're fired. So it kind of depends on what she pleads to, what the local, presiding judge wants to do, whether the legislature impeaches her. Like, if she is ultimately convicted, does the legislature say, oh, that's removal for cause, and so we're going to impeach her or something, right? Some other check on her power. So I think more will be revealed. I have a hard time believing she's going to plea out unless it's like to a diversion deal, which maybe it will be. I don't know, but we'll see. But we'll get into that tomorrow. Bucky's is Rome says, CNN is actively deleting all the videos of Pencilneck, saying he has all the evidence of Russia collusion. They deleted at least 4 interviews he had done to an enterprising conservative DOJ attorney. This could be conspiracy and even RICO if they did what Democrats do and get creative with their charging documents. From Bucky's is Rome, deleting stuff on CNN. Jeffrey Adams says, screw the Dems. They drew first blood. Yeah, and it's like, you have to go correct. You have to go balance the force. Like, you got to correct the record and make sure this doesn't happen again because they breached the seal. Shouldn't have done it. FD man, what's up? Never happened before is the Democrats' new talking point. COVID mandates and now the Biden DOJ coordination with all those Dems. Sad idiots. They broke the glass and they will reap what they sow. They will reap what they sow. Hey, Mike. What's up? Mike in the house. Thank you, Mike, for this very nice dono. Says seldom catch live shows. Thanks. Thank you, Mike. Very nice to have you here. Glad you made it by. Hopefully we can see you more often. And we appreciate your support. Thanks for being here, my man. And thanks for the very nice and generous tip. We appreciate you. FD man says, Big Fani, watch that back blast area on that Big Fani. FD man. FD man. Grammy, what's up? Hey, Grammy, Clover is here. Have you seen the opinion of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in Moncada versus Rubio case on birthright citizenship? I don't think so. Maybe that's what Chubby was referencing. If not, could you go over it? Is that the one? Maybe this is the one on the diplomat's son. I don't think we've gone over that, but maybe we will. Yeah. So maybe let me look into it because isn't there another birthright citizenship, like oral argument happening when the court is back in session? I think that's like on this term, right? Yes. Thank you, Grammy Clover, for that. Birthright citizenship. I think it's a very important issue. It's critical. It's one component of the entire, operation. You got to secure the border. You have to make sure that the people who came in illegally don't get benefits of that and that their children don't inherit stolen citizenship. And you also have to make sure that you're properly reapportioned as well to make sure that they're not getting votes for that population in their states. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. And we're going to see what the Supreme Court says about it. Thank you, Grammy Clover, for flagging it for us. We'll look at it. Psychological projectionist Nathan asked, and Fani allegedly complied. And VV. And that's what happened from Psychological Projectionist. Thank you for that one. This one, FD man. Fani is acting like a petulant, recalcitrant child. Children like that need a good spanking on that Big Fani. Oh my gosh. She might like that though. King of Biltong. Look at this great comment. Says, kick off your health journey today by getting some tasty, high-protein meat snacks. Biltong is packed with B12. iron, zinc, creatine, and more. We love that creatine. Get some at BiltongUSA.com, and you can use code Robert. You'll save 10% off over there, and you'll support our friend King of Biltong and BiltongUSA.com. What's up, Bucky's is Rome? Hey, dear Republicans, you can end the lawfare that is going to happen to rig the 2026 election by passing a law ordering a new census next month. You can investigate and impeach the judges. You can target Democrats, lawyers, and fine them anything to charge them with. You can pass voter fortification like government IDs. You can do what Democrat DOJs do and sue Democrat jurisdictions for election shenanigans. The Republicans-controlled Congress could do so much. Yeah, I think that's right. That they could be doing a lot more. We're currently seeing a lot of letters and a lot of Fox News appearances, which is good for them, but I don't know what it does for us. What's up? Hey, it's T Testes. He says, hey, it's TT Estates, not T Testes. Are you sure? I don't know. I think it might be T Testes, but if you say so. TT Estates. I thought it was T Testates or Testes. Hey, Nancy. Hey, T Testes, T Estates is shouting out Nancy Knox Bierman in the house, defense attorney extraordinaire from Texas. Psychological projectionist is in the house. He says imposing burdens on signing hundreds of votes is good. Yeah, like you have to, like there's a standard. Like you got to get your driver's license. You got to pass a test. Okay, you have to be like competent to participate. If you can't fill out a date, then you lose. Vote next time. Rob, is there an appeal going on regarding Jack Smith's legality? Or that the Mar-a-Lago cases shouldn't have been dismissed? No, that's all done, man. Yeah, Jack Smith, they voluntarily dismissed it after Trump won. It's closed out. Yeah, that case is done. He's not appealing it. The DOJ is not behind an appeal. Mar-a-Lago's closed until they get indicted. Cliff Norman, we don't have a democracy. If you cannot complete the ballot, you're probably not qualified to vote in our republic. Thank you, Cliff. Hopefully the judge sees your comment and modifies his first sentence. Thank you, Cliff. Good to have you here. Hey, what's up? FD Man is calling Kilmar a poop head. Yeah. Milan. You know, the nutty Ninth Circuit birthright citizenship decision is great news. Man, so that's like 3 comments on that. Did I miss that today or is that an older one? Chubby, thank you for that one. Milan, we appreciate you. Chubby, this ballot date BS rulings by these courts sound eerily similar to what they did during the pandemic to subvert state laws in order to change the election rules. 100% Chubby. I'm having flashbacks to that. We covered a lot of that because the legislature decides what happens with the elections. And back during COVID, it's the same like groups, like the League of Women Voters. Remember all these like really amorphous groups were all suing, saying emergency, due process, constitutional right to vote. They have to be able to do these and they can't because of COVID. And so we can change everything. We can waive signatures. We can add ballot drop boxes. We can postpone deadlines. We can invalidate dates. All sorts of stuff got changed. And it was unconstitutional. FD man. Those Democrats fighting Kilmar probably bought his photos, maybe. FD man. Duck Fat is here. Abrego Garcia is not wrong when he says the U.S. government is corrupt. It was the U.S. government that allowed him to traffic children and smuggle illegal immigrants, then arrested him for it. I'd call that corrupt AF. I'm with you on that, Duck Fat. And I think he's talking about the new government that's corrupt because it wasn't enabling his criminality. See how that works? Yeah. No, he would rather have the old people who just allowed open trafficking of illegal aliens into our country. Pinochet says Fani is wielding an @4. I don't know what this comment is, man, but I'm too scared to read it. Groundhog Gaming. Thank you for the comment. Pinochet's helicopter tour is the best helicopter ride you've ever been on. Groundhog Gaming. 5 months as a member. Thank you, Groundhog, for being here. Over halfway to a full baby. Language in that Ninth Circuit decision might help. We have to read that one now for sure. NY, thank you for that, Groundhog Gaming. Thanks for supporting us. NY says, what's up, NY? NY Renal MD in the house, sharing this one, says, a small additional amusing tidbit about Abrego. The official language of Uganda is English since 1962, but he can't speak English, apparently. I think we think he can, but he's kind of hiding it from his ability. The official language of Uganda is English since 1962. He can't even speak English. Veloplot, what's up? Hey, enjoyed the stream, but I'm going to have to switch over to the Starship third launch attempt right now. All right, let's cue it up. Are they in space right now? Let's see. Oh, it hasn't happened yet. Nice.
For liftoff, the 33 Raptor engines on the Super Heavy booster will start
4 minutes
firing at their maximum thrust, over twice the thrust of the Saturn V.
4 minutes is what it looks like.
And then fingers
3
crossed.
And counting. All right, so keep our eye on that. So we'll see the rocket blast off. We'll see, probably watch that on the after party. Let's take a look at some friends over on X. Actually, I don't know if we're going to have an after party. Let me check that because the YouTube studio is broken. We're going to have an after party. Tremendous. Okay, so we'll have an after party. So Membos, we'll see you over there. And YouTube friends and locals Membos, we'll see you over there because it's working. So we'll do it. All right, so let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up on the day. Mini Tika in the house. What's up, Mini Tika? Thank you for sharing this on Rumble, flagging the video over on the Rumble player. Elliot is here asking this question. What's up, Elliot? Make sure you're following Elliot. He's got a great Substack, too, where he's digging into a lot of... This is Doc Master in the house, in case you didn't know. He says, will the DOJ release the final opinions that address whether the documents at issue in Jack Smith's Espionage Act counts are personal property or whether they belong to the U.S. government? Yeah, great questions from Elliot. And we'll see. I mean, hopefully... I don't know how relevant that's going to be. Like, Trump's not being indicted anymore, right? Trump's not on the receiving end of this, so it's the other crew. Hey, this came in from our friend Paul Minot, a meme smith extraordinaire here. Here's an interesting one. It says, the power of Trump compels you. The power of Trump compels you. It says Kash Patel, too. And Fani is just laying there. She says, I could use a Nathan's footlong right now. She's doing her head spin. Wow. Yeah, that's an exorcism that we definitely need. Hopefully it works. The power of Trump compels you. You might need more than that. You might need Christ and a couple others. So we got that. All right. So thank you for that. What's up, Elliot? Yeah, here's another one from Paul Minot in the house. What's up? Paul Minot shared this one. And yeah, here it is. Here it is. Yeah, this is real. Jack Smith is freaked out like Pinocchio running down, and there's Trump following Jack Smith. Jack Smith is freaked and also not a real boy. Not at all. Hey, what's up, B. Torn? Good to see you. You mentioned 1913 this morning, and I saw this. Yeah, the Federal Reserve. We talked a lot about that. B. Torn, great comments. All right, so we got about a minute left. Let's watch this blast off together, and then we'll call it a day because... man, we're getting fired up right now. Make sure this is live.
Watching in Hawthorne, California. They're very excited. We're very excited. Everyone in chat should be very excited.
We are!
Under a minute from launch. 45 seconds to go. Let's look out for the detonation suppression system underneath that orbital launch mount, and then that flame deflector lighting up as well. 40 seconds to go. We should be blasting through that hold point. 30 seconds now. We are going through the hold. There is no hold. We are counting down.
Let's go, baby!
That detonation suppression system, which we should see underneath the booster any moment now. T-minus 20 seconds. Here it comes. Stand by for the deluge.
10.
We are go for launch. There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Let's go. Look at that thing, baby. Woo! It's like a skyscraper flying through the air. Wild. Looking good, looking nice and steady. This is the appropriate trajectory that I'd be flying at. Right here. It's exactly right where I'd be. So, nice to see it. Perfectly executed. Well done.
We are 60 seconds into flight. Starship is well and truly off and away. Vapor cone.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness. Look at that live shot of Starship ascending into space. We are 33 engines for 33 engines on the Super Heavy booster.
Let's
we are
go.
headed to hot staging.
Amazing. That was stunning.
And we're getting the onboard views of that beautiful vapor cone. The expansion of the exhaust is now starting. We're seeing the pink and purple hues of the Raptor engines. Alex, how is that from your point of view, the first 90 seconds of flight?
It's going well. That was an amazing vapor cone as Starship was just punching through the atmosphere, getting into space. So far, so good. It looks like
Starship
it got one engine out now.
Have they lost an engine? So we're now 32 for 33 engines. Alex, whereabout is that engine on the booster? Is that one of the center or one of the boosts?
On the middle ring of 10 engines on Super Heavy.
Okay. That's going to be interesting to see how they play out for the rest of the flight, because remember, the Super Heavy booster intended to do an experimental landing burn where they would use one of the middle ring engines to supplement one of the center engines. However,
I was going to mention the roll that is happening right now, that is nominal. It is in preparation for the flip at hot staging. Remember that the booster will flip up during hot staging.
And we are only a few seconds away from that
Our
hot
beautiful
staging
planet. Look at that,
maneuver.
baby.
We should see all but 3 of those Super Heavy engines shutting down, the ship 6 engines not lighting up, and then those 2 vehicles separating. Let's watch from on board these vehicles.
Awesome. All right, so they're getting close, it looks like right now, to stage separation, so we'll watch
shutdown on the
this.
Super Heavy, the ignition of the vacuums, the ignition of the centers, and we should have visual confirmation.
Boom!
There we go.
There's the flip.
The ship has separated, and the booster is now flipping around. The middle ring ignited on Super Heavy. That is now heading not back to the launch site, but close to it. We're going to the Gulf with Super Heavy Booster 16 this time around. So let's keep an eye on that boost back burn to continue going. Ship on its way to its near orbital trajectory. Adrian, let's throw it to you.
Man, how do they do this stuff, man? It's crazy. Congratulations to everybody who is a part of this. How cool is that? So, amazing success looks like so far. And they'll have some additional Super Heavy landing coming down here in a little bit. And so, my friends, what a beautiful stream. Thanks for hanging with us and blasting off into space together. We, of course, are very grateful for you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of our show today and for hanging with us. Of course, we're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to say what's up. Bucky's is Rome says 5 minutes until the Starship launch, baby. Man, thank you guys for flagging it. Yeah, here you go. FD Man says the Starship has more thrust than a Nathan's foot long. Yeah, that's true. More engines too. Definitely more engines too. Good stuff. Okay, so my friends, we're going to pause here, of course, for the day, and we're going to head on over to Locals and YouTube Membo. Stick around. We're going to refresh, and we'll see what else is coming down, but including from outer space. We hope to see you there. But if not, we'll be back tomorrow to get into it again. Of course, we want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who help keep things nice and beautiful and orderly around here, including Donut Mind Me. We got John. We got K Bean in the house. Carrie B. We got Neuro D. Dog Digger. Janek. Over on the Rumbles. Just Rhonda, Elliott, and Geegum Geegum, our meme smith extraordinaire. Grateful for everybody who helps keep this train on the tracks, and we appreciate you. But, my friends, that's going to be it for us on the day. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for going through the news. We're coming back to get into more business tomorrow. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through